Hi everyone. Very happy to introduce Syd Moore. Tell us a little bit about you and your book. Did you hear that?
No.
Introduce yourself and your books for us.
Okay, brilliant. Sorry, I'm just trying to turn my phone off so that hopefully it's less broadband. So, I am Syd Moore, and I'm probably better known for the Essex Witch Museum mysteries, which are set in Essex. But my latest book is The Grand Illusion, and it is set in 1940. And it looks at the way the British Secret Service exploited the Third Reich's High Command's obsession with the occult, because we all know that they were, you just watch Indiana Jones and the, Temple of Doom, Spear of Destiny to know that, and also Call of Duty, Captain America. We all know that they were obsessed with the occult, but actually like that. And that's one of these things allegedly took place in the New Forest in 1940, and that is what my book is about.
And that did actually happen, didn't it? It was a real thing, the sort of ritual in the New Forest.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. So Gerald Gardner said that did happen. So Gerald Gardner is known as the father of Wicca, the pagan religion. And he said that it did happen. It happened in the New Forest. It happened with the New Forest Coven, which was a coven that he was associated with. And he said that the ritual was performed and some of the members of the coven died because it was so exhausting for them, it took so much effort out of them. Cecil Williamson, who is the founder of the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Boscastle. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's really, really amazing. He said that it did happen. But he said, although there were occultists and witches there, numbers were made up by Canadian airmen who were in the so they thought there was German agents in the area, and the idea was that the German agents would leak this back to the Third Command and wobble their resolve to invade the British Isles. So, but Amado Crowley, who was he claims to be the son of Aleister Crowley, the great beast. So, do you know Aleister Crowley? Have you heard of him? You must have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have heard of him.
Yeah. So he was. Yeah, he's because he's quite a famous occultist, but he's full of controversy, I guess. He changed magic. Well, Gardner had at the end of the workings, Gardner and pagans and Wiccans still to this do my will and harm it none, or do thou will and harm it none. But Aleister Crowley took the harm it none off. So he said, do thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. So he kind of was all about getting things done through magic in a slightly less ethical way than other people were. But he was also, he was a bit of a showman. He claimed lots of different things. And Amado Crowley, who claims to be his son, we don't really even know if he was, or if he was just claiming that. He said that everything Gerald Gardner and Cecil Williamson had said was rubbish, and that the ritual actually took place in 1941. Weird, because it was a year after, and it was all done by his father, Alistair Crowley. So I think Alistair Crowley was actually in London at that time. So that's been dismissed. His claims have been dismissed. But yeah, that's a really long answer. This is a really good question. I think on balance, yes, it probably did in the New Forest. I came across a ranger, and the ranger told me, I told her the stories about this ritual, and I said, I told her as well about the Canadian Airmen, and she said, oh, well, no, if it's meant to be here, that does make sense, because if you just go 200 meters up the road, around the corner, there is a memorial to the Canadian Airmen that worked here, and it's like literally a stone's throw from where the ritual was meant to have taken place. So I think Cecil Williamson probably was right that there was Canadian Airmen there. And I think Gerald Gardner was right that there were also occultists and members of this New Forest Coven involved in it as well. And also because I was like knocking on doors and going up to people's places and making a general nuisance of myself and trespassing. I did sort of talk to one of the farmers there where his cottage had been in. I told him both stories, and he said, and my father basically used to tell stories about when the witches went into the wood. So, and then obviously pointed to this place, which is another guy called Philip Heselton has written a book about the coven, and he's looked into the ritual and to see. He was wondering if it did happen, and the place where he thinks it's happened, I think, is the place where it happened. And I think with all the extra information and research that I've done, I think it probably did happen, and it's probably a mixture of both things. Did the military know about it? Again, Cecil Williamson said that it was called Operation Mistletoe. Difficult to find some Secret Service records, but lots of things were destroyed after the war. And also, I think it was so strange. They had plausible deniability built into the whole thing. So, anyway, so there you go. Very long answer to your question.
A very good answer to my question. How are people adapting across? Because you have quite a fan base for the other series, including me. I'm a huge fan, and you know that. How are people going across to the new book? How are your existing fans taking it?
I don't know, actually. I think it's because it's only been out for 2 weeks. So I don't know. I haven't really. Actually, no. So do you know Blue Book Balloon? He's a blogger. He's a blogger. He follows me on Twitter, and he's a fan of the other series, and he did a review of it, and he really liked it. And also, I think as well, because have you finished it yet, Caroline?
I have. It's marvelous.
Oh, thank you. I think it's not a spoiler to say that Septimus has a role in it. And so Septimus obviously is he's the founder of the Essex Witch Museum, which he bequeaths to Rosie, who is actually his granddaughter via his daughter. Anyway, blah 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 blah. But he's in it, so we meet him in not as an old man or as a deceased relative, as he is in the Witch Museum Mysteries, but as a young man who is working with this Section W for the security services. And this has been alluded to before in the Witch Museum Mysteries. But yeah, I really like Septimus as a character because, I've written about him a few times in the short stories. And it was really lovely to spend some time with him and see him as a young man, not weary and not old, intelligent, skeptical, but also knowledgeable about magic and these different things. It was great. And actually the book that I'm finishing at the moment, which is why I missed you last time because I ended up writing, is he's got he turns up in Iceland, and there's, I don't know if you remember the short story Septimus and the Shaman. It's in the, do you remember it? I think it's in the red book. The
remind us.
Hang on, let me just get it. Sorry, I hope you don't get to see my knickers when I'm reaching up for that. This one. So this in here, we've got a story called Septimus and the Shaman. And this is actually mentioned in Strange Sight, the second book in the Essex Witch Museum series. So Sam is having a chat with Rosie in this pub in London, around the corner to Fetter Lane, which is where the restaurant La Fleur is situated, which is at the core of the mystery in Strange Sight. And he mentions to Rosie that, once I think your granddad told me that he'd smoked some wacky backy. So she says, "What? Really?" He said, "Yeah. Well, he was at the time he was communing with a shaman and saw a demon, a fire demon. So anyhow, and in Iceland, and she's like, oh my god, I had no idea." And so I then wrote. I kind of really wanted to think about that and explore it. So I then wrote the Septimus the Shaman, which is a short story about this episode. Sam starts talking to Septimus about it, and then they go back, and he thinks back to what actually happened in Iceland and that experience. So actually, the second book is kind of like the backstory to that, but it's set against the 1940 British invasion of Iceland. So, and we have Daphne going off to Iceland to, well, I won't spoil it for you, but she goes with Septimus is there as well. So Septimus does his thing, she does her thing. So yeah. So I think, there are, whilst it's not Essex Witch Museum, there are, there's a little bit of crossover. There's a little bit of a nod to the young Septimus, and we get to see what he's like. So I think that fans have enjoyed that element. But obviously the language is very different. And the way I've written it is extremely different. So it's, I've had to do lots and lots of research, and throughout it I have the directives, memos, reports, newspaper cuttings all the way through. So that, which is a very different style. But it seems to be, so far, people have really enjoyed it. I think they've liked the difference. I haven't had anybody feed back to me that they haven't liked it because of the difference. But maybe it's early days, so who knows? And also, there will always be people who will complain to me about something. So, yeah, I'm sure there'll be loads of people who just say, "Oh no, I didn't like it. It's not so funny." Blah blah blah. But anyway, we'll see.
Well, my conversation with the lady in Waterstones went like this. I was like, "Where is the new Syd Moore book?" And she went and found it. And she said, "What is this about?" And I said, "I don't care. It's by Syd Moore."
Oh, that's so lovely.
So we had a nice conversation about we had a nice conversation about your writing.
So did you say you've got to read her?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Checks in the post, Caroline.
Did you not? You did a residency in Iceland, didn't you? Because I'm so excited to read a book by you set in Iceland, because Iceland's like a magical place, isn't it? It's like unearthly when you're there. It's so like it feels magical.
Yeah, I mean, it's so actually, I had a residency, I think it was in October, and I've got another one going on the 29th so actually I think week after next, to fact check and so Caroline, you've been presumably.
Yeah.
So did you go up north?
No, we only went for a few days, so we sort of stayed around Reykjavik, and then we want to go back.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved it. But we went north because, well, there is the Museum of Witchcraft and Sorcery in Holmavik in the north. And of course, I had to go there. But I also wanted to speak to a grimoire expert. I'm giving stuff away now, but I needed to speak to a grimoire expert. And there are loads and loads of Icelandic, well, not loads and loads, but there are several Icelandic grimoires. A grimoire, which you probably know, but I think other people might not know, is an old European spell book. And in fact, I've got a replica. Well, the guy basically. I said, "Oh, have you got anyone I can speak to grimoires about?" And they said, "Oh, yes." So Magnus Rathson is one of the foremost experts in grimoires in Europe, and he came to talk about grimoires and show me one. And he's actually he's the author of this, which is 2 Icelandic books of magic grimoires, which just have got the whole grimoire in it. It's like reproduction, so it tells you what the spells are. Anyway, look, it's the sigils, absolutely fascinating. So anyhow, Holmavik. So we had to go north, up to Holmavik to get there. Holmavik is it's like the biggest town. I think it's the sort of capital town of Strandir, which is the region. Strandir is known as the land of sorcerers, which is great. So Holmavik is the centre of it, and there's probably like maybe 70 houses there. So, although it's a capital, because everything is in Iceland, I think they've got twice the population of Southend-on-Sea in the whole of Iceland. So it's not hugely populated. I think 2/3 of the population live in Reykjavik as well. So once you go out of Reykjavik, you get on those big roads and you don't pass a car for an hour. And as you go out, you know, the landscape that, like you were saying, is just so stunning. We were moving out of Reykjavik, I think it was October anyway, and so the season was changing, and as we moved out of the south, the landscape was sort of black, big black volcanic rocks either side. You sort of go through with this valley, and we had the colors were like green and black, and then as you move up, you kind of, the colors start changing. Then this, I thought it was grass, but it's actually a mountain, tiny mountain flower. And as you move north, the green starts to change into yellow. It's this flower dying or changing, and then because it's autumn, and then as we got to the north, the flower had turned red. So you're just in this landscape of red and grey and black, and it's just, yeah, it's like being on Mars, or you just think, God, I can't believe this place. It's just so strange and so different, and it's really easy. So, you know, a lot of their mythology is about the Huldufolk, which are elves, but you know, elves aren't, it's not like the Eurovision, you know, that film. It's not like the Will Ferrell little tiny elf people. You know, elves are, they're like humans. They see them as humans. I think they're Lilith's children, and they're the same size as us or taller, and they're just invisible. You can't see them, or only people with the gift can see them. That's why they have these sacred elf churches around the place. And they're really interested. I think it was like 60% of, well, it might be 70% of the Icelandic population. If you ask them, do you believe in elves? They say, I don't not believe in them. So that's a huge percentage will not say they don't believe in them, because they're just, you know, worried they don't want to upset them. And that, you know, they'll fall prey to lots of mischief if they upset them. But, you know, in that landscape, there's lots of rocks. You see loads of rocks piled on top of each other at places in between. And I think they're markers for when it's snowing and you might get lost. But some people have said there's something to do with the elves, monuments to the elves. And then when you're looking at these huge mountains on either side with these sort of, because they're volcanic rock, you can see there's holes where the boulders have rolled down, and you can start to see faces in them. And so this is also the land of trolls, these huge beasts that live in the mountains. And, you know, I was saying to Magnus when I saw him at the museum, I said, you can see, because it's so huge, you feel very small with these huge mountains and no one else around, no sign of life. And you look into these mountains and you can start to see features. I think it's, you know, it's pareidolia, so it's human condition. You start to see faces and things that there aren't. But anyway, I said to him, you can really see why trolls are part of your mythology, because the land is so huge and it dwarfs you. It just feels inhuman. It doesn't feel like it's human sized. And he said to me, I said, so you can see why there's this mythology about trolls. And he said, because you can see the faces in the mountains. And he said, yeah, that's true. He said, you can see faces in the mountain, and if you look long enough, some of them move.
Oh, wow. Maureen has said that your description of Iceland sounds amazing. But it's just weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you can describe it and like truly do it justice.
No, it's beautiful. It's shockingly beautiful. It's sort of, you know, so harsh. And, you know, my dad thinks I'm absolutely mad that keep going back to Iceland to study. He's like, why don't you set something in the Bahamas? you're mad. And I was just like, no, because it's amazing. You can't, yeah, you're right. You can't describe it properly. You have to be there, feel it yourself. But obviously, I am trying to do that with the next book, which I'm really enjoying. And yeah, the research has been amazing, and mostly the Icelandic people are very friendly. In fact, we met this bloke on the bus coming back from Reykjavik, because I'm staying at the Writers' Union. It's sort of just on the outskirts of Reykjavik, but anyhow, we've stayed in touch with him, and he's organised us to go to Parliament and look around Parliament there. So have a tour of it, which will be amazing. And obviously, everything helps with my research, because I need to know more about the Icelandic government during the Second World War. So hopefully they'll be able to talk to me, because they all speak English, but a lot of the documentation is in Icelandic. So I don't speak Icelandic. I can't translate it. So talking to people is really important for me to get authentic understanding of the process. Basically, October to November 1940 is when this book is set, and during the Battle of the Atlantic. And loads of people don't know that we invaded Iceland, so it's a really interesting subject for me.
Yeah, we should probably put you. Do you know Unina, Leo's daughter? She writes crime, but she also has.
Say that again.
Do you know Unina, Leo's daughter? She writes crime, but she's connected to the Icelandic Parliament.
Oh, who is it?
Unina Leo's daughter. I'll put you in contact with her after.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I probably will recognise the name, but it's like how you pronounce it. We it's really hard to pronounce Icelandic, I think, especially as like that. Sometimes they don't have vowels in their names. So, yeah, you're like, hello.
What else was I going to ask you? The research must have been huge, because it's really accurate. You're talking about the OTO and things in the first book, and like you have to know a little bit about quite a bit about paganism, I think, before you stumble upon the OTO.
Yeah, well, I sort of like in my 20s, so I went to a few witch fests in the sacred Isle of Croydon, and sort of talked to some Thelemites there. So I did know about it, but also this research obviously was there was a lot to do, because, well, if you just start, I've sort of been interested in this idea, the cone of power, for a while, but when you think about, like, it was in the Second World War, and you think about researching the Second World War, and honestly, how many books are there on the Second World War? You just sort of look at it and you think, oh, where do I begin? So I kind of like decided, right, okay, I'm going to start reading about the journey to war and what was going on in Germany. And then I basically moved up to spring 1940, and I thought, right, I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to learn about what happens as my characters move through the war, move through day by day, what happens and what days. Because again, as the war progresses and it does become a world war, there's just so much going on in so many different places, and it's really difficult to sort of keep an eye on all of that detail, knowing what to cover and what not to cover. But obviously, when you create your characters, you you start to eliminate so much, because there's only so much that they can know, and also there's only so much that they care about, which is quite brutal, but that is what human beings are like. You might not really care about what's going on in Egypt, but you might really care about the bomb that just dropped in Southwark in the next neighbourhood. Do you know what I mean? So you sort of start to reduce the narrow your framework for reference. But so there's all of that, and then also big with the magical side of it and what was going on, and the fact that, you know, we'd been really successful with the Dunkirk operation and evacuated the men, and it was really successful in terms of morale. But we had left all the machinery and the weapons and the ammunition and the tanks and the guns on the beach for the Germans. So we weren't on a really good war footing in spring 1940. And then, of course, Churchill comes in and says, we will fight them on the beaches. We will never, never surrender, which is basically, you know, like that, which I think he did do, actually, at the beginning. He was like that. And then, like, Viva Victory, as someone said to him, actually, no, it's not that way. Do it that way, because that way is a completely different thing. But I think he did start off like with, way, victory. But his speech was actually a couple of days to Hitler, who had at that point hoped that he might be able to broker peace with England. He referred to the British Isles as England. But obviously Churchill delivered that speech as a signal to say he was not going to surrender. And so at this point, Hitler was going to invade the British Isles with Operation Sea Lion. So we'd had to, the Secret Service had 39 agents at the beginning of 1939, and they were the only ones charged with the defence of the realm. So we very quickly had to recruit more agents. And we recruited laterally, as in the book. So lots of different people, and academics, lion tamers, circus managers, West End theatre designers, filmmakers, sculptors, surrealist poet. And they all recruited to give ideas. Like, what can we do to repel the German invasion? What can we do? And, you know, a lot of these people did go off for training at Farnham Castle, which is in the book, where the centre for the development of camouflage and training was, to help to develop ideas to help the Home Guard, because they thought that the Home Guard were going to have to tackle the German invaders on home territory. And then, of course, they go down to get involved with this ritual. So lots of research into what was going on at Farnham Castle. I went to Farnham Castle, but at this point, we were coming out of lockdown, and they weren't really allowed to open to the public, but they did let me in to have a look around. Although, you know, it's funny, isn't it, actually, when you think back to, it was back 4 years ago, and we were sort of in hazmat suits. Well, we weren't in hazmat suits, but we were like masked up, gloved up, 6 yards away from each other. But that was it. So I had basically followed Daphne and Jonty's progression across the British Isles, researching all the time, speaking to people. And it was really fascinating. So I really enjoyed it. And it's given me confidence to tackle more wartime stories as well. And I kind of now I think I've proved to myself that you can probably set a book at any time period, really. And as long as you put the research in, then I think that because we're all humans and we haven't changed that much, really, since, well, if you think about the witch hunt, since for over 400 years, we haven't fundamentally changed. So I think humans you could create a book in any time period, and our emotions are going to be the same. What people want are going to be the same. People want to be loved. They want to have a good life. They want to look after their children. You know, all of these things they're universal and they're timeless. So people's motivations are usually exactly the same today as they were 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 600 years ago, you know. So yeah, handling it has made me realize that you can do more. I can do more with fiction than I thought I could.
And you already do quite a lot of good stuff with fiction.
I love talking to you, Caroline. You're so good. You're so good for me. It's like therapy.
Daphne's a great character. I love her. She's like such a, because she's so, like, she knows exactly what she wants, doesn't she? She's quite like a tough woman.
Oh, I couldn't hear you then. You dropped out. Sorry. She said Daphne is a great character because
she's quite a tough woman, isn't she? She sort of knows where she wants to go and what she wants to do.
Yeah, and I don't want to spoil anything, but she becomes tougher as well in this one that I'm writing. But yeah, I think that was really interesting writing her, first of all, because of course I've just said that it's really easy to go back because human emotions are probably the same, and they are, but the time as well, because I'm a feminist and I like writing about feminist feisty characters, but obviously feminism did not exist at this point in time in the 40s, and women were just, you know, some of the stuff that I've had to read in research, like Dennis Wheatley's biography, my God, you know, just the sexism that is in there, and sexism, racism, homophobia, just name it, it's in there. But he's, you know, this is the time when people did slap girls and women on the bum. Well done, darling. So you've got to, and women and girls sort of had to take it. So that was an interesting. It was an interesting environment to situate a character who the modern reader sees the world through, because of course she can't stop. This was the world that these women lived in. So you can't have her going, how dare you do that, slapping someone around the face, although I'm sure some of them did. But you had power hierarchies, and women weren't really allowed in. Women weren't allowed into the army, etc. They had auxiliary places for the Women's Auxiliary, WAA, Women's Auxiliary Aircraft something, and the Wrens. But you know, it's very limited what they could do. This character who did have a sense of self and a sense of where she could go, and who pushed herself to achieve more. And of course, war was terrible, but it did give women the opportunity to break out from the domestic sphere, and which is basically why we have the more equal world we live in today. And we're not equal yet, but because of these women in the war, because they came out and they worked, we do have more equality. And it was really interesting writing Daphne and being limited by society, what she might have been able to do. And I kind of thought it would be interesting to have the stage magician and his assistant, because of course Jonty's a lovely character, but you know, magicians are the people who stand up on stage and who take all the glory and all of the applause, when actually it has been the stage magician's assistant who has been running around, cramming themselves into tiny little boxes, feeding clues, jumping through trapdoors, sorting out the doves, everything, selecting people from the audience who she thinks, the assistant has done all of the work, and the magician gets all of the adulation. So, which is kind of like a metaphor for what was going on with the sexes at that time. But I think that I've sort of put in as well at the end of this one that actually she starts to get a little bit fed up with the fact that after she's had this experience in the war, she does get fed up with the fact that actually it's the men who are getting all of the applause. And, that was something that a lot of women felt at the end of the war. They were sort of like, well, actually, we're not happy now going back. Now the men are back, they want to resume their jobs, but we don't want to just go back and let them. So, yeah, I'm rambling. I'm going to shut up. You can ask me another question if you've got any.
It was good rambling. I've got to say, and I was waiting till the chat before I put it out there, but I've got to say that I read books cover to cover, and I genuinely was really honoured because you mentioned me in the acknowledgements of the book, and I was like so giddy. I messaged everyone. I was like, check this out. So thank you very much.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you always for your support as well. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad. Did you see that in Waterstones, or did you see it at the end of the book?
I saw it at the end of the book. Then I was telling my husband about it, and he was like, "Oh, you should have gone back and like shown the lady in Waterstones." It'd been like, "Look."
Oh, I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased it gave you a swell, Caroline, because it is, you are a great support, really fantastic reader as well, and I really appreciate it.
But yeah, it's good, and I'm so excited that there's going to be more of the series as well, because I finished it and was like, do you want to know what's going to happen next? Like, there's definitely more to come. And I think that's the thing when people talk about the influence of like magic in the war, everyone knows about like maybe the ritual in the New Forest and stuff, but I don't think that was it. I think there was probably other things going on with these kind of people. And I think it's good that you're going to carry it on and tell us more stories.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I can't really say much more, but yeah, there will be more operations explored, which is, again, I've sort of found them out from looking into these biographies of these different people who have said that what they did in the war effort, though some of them have a very elastic relationship with the truth. But luckily speculate. But yeah, there'll be more, and of course, I know that you're quite a close reader, Caroline, so you probably would have noticed things that I've put in as like kind of clues that 9 lives, 8 lives, 6 lives, 7 lives left, and then so we know she's running out of lives. So what's going to happen? We know that something's going to happen, which is huge. Is she going to survive it? Is the question. And there are also those moments when we flip into Germany, and we see some of the very dark stuff that's going on. And obviously that's not brought to a conclusion in the Grand Illusion, but it will be by the end of the series. So yeah, but when you're writing a trilogy, you don't really want to sew everything up. So although there are things that are that worked out, so the main story is worked out in the Grand Illusion, there are other things left open, which I'm exploring in this next one and the third one. So hopefully there's sort of like little breadcrumbs for people to follow all the way through. And they'll be like, ah, so that's what that meant.
So what will be next after that? So you're going to finish the trilogy. Is there going to be any more of the Essex Witch series?
Oh yeah, definitely. So do you know what? I have submitted it, but just my editors changed. So I don't know when it's coming out. But I've got Strange Maven. So Strange Raven is the next one, which I've written, but I don't know when. I don't know when they're bringing it out. It's all kind of like it's all about publishing, because they want the spotlight on the Grand Illusion. They don't want it to be detractive from. But loads of people ask me all the time. I just did talk Friday night and did a talk Monday, and I had fans with the Witch Museum series there, and they were both saying, "When's the next one coming out?" And I was like, I had my publicist there. I was like, "I don't know. Do you know?" And she was like, "I don't know. Have to find out." And so I've got, I've written it. I'll probably have to do a rewrite, but it's not concluded in that. That's obviously it's the other series that I'm writing. It's not concluded in that. I need one more book to write because Caroline, who's Rose's dad?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we need all the answers, don't we? I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is the Strange Maven is it moves that question on a little bit, but not hugely. So, and I know who the dad is. I know there's, again, with the Essex Witch Museum series, Rose's story, which starts in Strange Magic, there's lots of different clues about her origins, I guess, her origin story, where she came from, who was her dad. We find out that her mum and her dad aren't her mum and her dad. They're not who she thought they were. So who is her mum and who is her dad? We find out who her mum is in Strange Fascination. And then we start to find out more about her dad in Strange. But then we find out a little bit more about Strange Maven, but then we find out a lot in the following one. And that's when I'm going to like tie everything up, but hopefully I can still write the same. I can still bring mysteries to the Essex Witch Museum to be investigated by Rosie and Sam, so I can still carry it on. And there's a big question over Rosie and Sam as well. So Dorcas is in this Strange Maven quite a lot, and he's wooing Rosie. But is Sam actually gonna finally tell Rosie what he thinks? Is Rosie gonna tell Sam? Well, we'll have to find out.
We will. Oh, exciting times. That's so good. Tell us what you were in the. I've got a couple of other questions before we finish up. Tell us a little bit about you being in The Guardian, because that was very exciting.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I know, because I sent it to you, didn't I? I said, "Oh yeah, looking forward to seeing you on Sunday." And look, have you seen this? So yeah, no, that was really good. Again, I think this book seems to have grabbed people. Probably, like you said, it's because it's got a wider appeal than the Essex Witches. But yeah, so Laura Wilson really liked it. Although she sort of said about I think she was disconcerted by the different points of view. But I wanted it to be like that. So the Grand Illusion obviously refers to the Cone of Power ritual, but I sort of discuss through the book about, I think one of the grand illusions of our time is power. You know, the idea that power is really important. We just look at the moment at Ukraine and Russia, look at Putin. You know, what is power all about? You know, if you seek more and more power, if you become the most powerful person in the world or whatever, like Hitler wanted to be the most powerful person in the world, probably Putin does too. But when you become the most powerful person in the world, you become the most vulnerable person in the world, because there are always people beneath you who want your power, just as you lusted after the power, you know. So there's an illusion about power, about war. But also the grand illusion refers to a psychological theory, which relates to our understanding of perception and of consciousness. And I think that's really a really interesting thing, which is sort of, I think about through a lot of my fiction, which is, you know, where is consciousness? When am I conscious? When are you conscious? When are we operating unconsciously? And what is real and what is not real? Are our perceptions real because we experience them, so we validate them? Does that invalidate other people's perceptions? Have they got a different reality? You know, all of this kind of quite abstract conceptualizing I kind of wanted to think about, but convey with a lightness so that it wouldn't freak people out and it could still be enjoyable and entertaining. But, you know, I think there are really big questions that we do need to think about at the moment, in terms of power, in terms of democracy, in terms of perception, in terms of reality. And I think we're at a really critical time in human evolution. Apart from climate change, war, you know, we also have AI, and I think we need to put some very clear governance in place. I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but I think that these are interesting times, and we do need to consider these questions very, very carefully, because they will change how we evolve or devolve in the future.
There's a really funny moment in the book, isn't there, where you play with the perception, where they're interviewing people to be like a fire warden, and then they do that trick where you have like someone doing something off in the corner, but you're telling them to watch something else, and you see if they notice it. And I thought that was quite humorous.
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I've because I've taught publishing and I've taught writing to students, and I used to do a little exercise for some of my FE students. So they're sort of 16, 17, 18, 19, some 20. And I'd be talking to them about how important it is to pay attention to your surroundings, and like when maybe you're doing a profile piece on someone and you're interviewing them, like I'm interviewing you or you're interviewing me now. I was always saying it's, you know, interview isn't just words, it's about non-verbal communication. It's about, you will have to come away, you'll probably have to describe this person, you'll have to you need to represent them and you're committed, you should be committed to represent them fairly, without bias. And it's really important that you are aware of everything about them. And as I'm doing this, as I'm talking about this, I get a knock on the door, and someone comes in, she says to me, Syd, can I just speak to you? Hands me a piece of paper. So I look at it and go, oh, right, yeah, thank you. Then I say to everybody, look, I'm just going to hand out this piece of paper. I'll be 1 minute. So I go out, and then I come back in and I say, right, can you just, like, I've just handed you that piece of paper. Can you just turn it over and fill it in now? And it says, the man who just interrupted me was a serial killer, and you've just witnessed him. How tall is he? What was he wearing? And I get them to write down everything they can about this man. And, nobody notices. They're just like, because he was just so insignificant, they didn't really notice him, even though I'm going, you've got to notice every detail. He's black, he's white, he's Chinese, he's Japanese, he's short, he's tall, he's wearing a blue shirt, a yellow t-shirt, an orange t-shirt, shorts, jeans, trousers. Nobody really pays attention at all if they don't think it's important. So I just sort of, anyhow, it's a good way, it's a good exercise to sort of make them aware of how little they are, because they do pick up if they're not focusing attention. And at the end of the session, I'd always have to come back in again, take a bow so they could see him, and be shocked as well by how little they soaked up of him. So, but yeah, so that kind of thing is, again, it's about perception, it's about detail, it's about being an eyewitness. And yeah, that was, the Charlie Chaplin scene. It was a good way, but also it's like, it's about psychops, it's about psychological manipulation and psychological warfare, which these things are still going on around us as well. We are still being manipulated, and the British government have used that, not just with overseas enemies, but also they've used it in Northern Ireland as well. So there's lots of cases where we have been manipulated to see things, and you can discuss how far we've been manipulated in terms of social media and Facebook and Brexit and Russia. It's good to be aware of these things. And I think that's sort of what I'm getting at, I think, in the book as well. Be aware.
What finishes off on a lighter note with what you've read recently and really enjoyed?
Well, actually, I've just finished Erin Kelly's book. Have you read it?
I haven't, no. Looks good.
It's really good. So, yeah, I read it in like 2 days. I really enjoyed it. It's sort of not her sequel to The Poison Tree. She wrote, I think The Poison Tree was one of her first books. It's not a sequel, but it's some of the characters like 30 years on, and you find out about what happened in The Poison Tree, and something happens in the contemporary timeline. That's really good. I'm also doing this. You probably like this one, Caroline. So I'm interviewing Marion Gibson for the Essex Book Festival, and this is her book. So that is Witchcraft: A History in 13 Trials.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah,
she's an academic. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. So I've got to read it, and I mean, I just she's really lovely as well, Marion. So I'm reading that, and of course, I am reading about spell books and Iceland and the Icelandic War Project. I'm also, this keeps being recommended to me because it's like a massive bestseller. And I thought I better get it to just see what's going on and why is she so popular? Although I've been told sex is it.
Probably.
No, would you agree with that? Have you read it?
I have read that book. Yeah. It wasn't my bit. I'm not the biggest fan of it.
Right. Okay. Why not?
I think I like a lot of like fantasy, and I think that's almost like a YA type fantasy, isn't it? But not. And it just doesn't feel like it's kind of going off of those. I think it's not written for young adults. It's a bit too full of things, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's better versions out there than that one.
Okay. Well, I will read that at some point, but I'm also reading. I'm going to Crime Fest in Bristol. Are you going?
No, can't get away from
it's
there.
quite away from you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I'm on a panel with Linda Stratman, so that's her book, her latest.
Cool.
So I've got to read that, and also the perfect couple by Jane McLaughlin. So she's on the panel as well. So I've started reading that one, which is good. They're all good at them, really good. So I'm enjoying that. But my TBR piles have taken over the bedroom. I'm also working with the Royal Literary Fund I run a reading round with palliative care patients in hospice on Fridays, and I read a short story to them, and then we discuss it, and then I read a poem and we discuss it. So sort of reading loads and loads of short stories to see if they're appropriate at the moment, and I'm working with refugees and asylum seekers, sort of reading stories to them on a Monday, and so reading lots of stories that are really different because the English has to be quite a basic level. So I'm kind of, what I'm doing at the moment is reading myths and legends, and because obviously I love that, and then retelling them to them. So they kind of like, I've done Dick Whittington, which they all they love it because it's about a poor boy who comes to London, so they can really relate it to that. And streets are paved with gold. They all they've come here and they think that streets are, or they're sort of led to believe it was all fantastic, and now they're sort of dealing with the grim reality of our weather, amongst other things. But yeah, so I've read King Arthur to them as well. Lots of different bits. The Beggar of Swaffham, Magic Porridge Pot, Tortoise and the Hare. But yeah, so loads and loads of reading, but for lots of different things. But I like a bit of a variety. Keeps me buzzing.
And then just remind everyone, show people the Grand Illusion again, so they know what they're going to go away and buy.
Yes, please buy it. Yeah, it's absolutely. It's so handsome, this cover, isn't it?
It's beautiful, isn't it? I like all the little symbols on it. It's really nice.
I'm so impressed by it. I really love it. First of all, I was a bit like, you can't have a Zeppelin. You can't have a Zeppelin there. And then they said, oh, no, it's not a Zeppelin. It's a barrage balloon, which there is a barrage balloon mentioned in it. But I think it's lovely. I think it's the one of the nicest covers I've ever seen, to be honest, because the gold is just beautiful. It just shines at you. I'm really interested to see what the next cover will be as well, because they're kind of like, they've chosen I think they're going to do a similar thing but with different colors. So this one's purple because a lot of the action takes place at night in the summer when you've got that kind of purple sky. And then the next one, obviously, it's going to be Iceland. So I don't know what, maybe red, black, I don't know. But be really interested to see. But I just love it, honestly. I might be buried with a copy in my coffin. Sorry, that's really macabre, isn't it? But I love it.
And then all that's left to say is thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Well, listen, I hope to see you in Harrogate. Are you going to Harrogate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, let's meet.
We will, yeah. But thanks for staying.